He sold his half, left her for another, but she didn't just survive, she won everything. The apartment that held dreams. Emma Clark had always believed that a home wasn't made of walls, it was made of moments of shared coffee in the morning, mismatched mugs, quiet glances across a messy kitchen, the warmth of laughter echoing through hallways. And when she and Ryan finally signed the papers for their first apartment, she thought, this is it, the start of forever. It wasn't grand. A 2-bedroom unit in a sun-drenched corner of the city with creaky floorboards and a balcony that overlooked the park. But to Emma, it was perfect. More than that, it was theirs. A blank canvas for their love story. At the time, they had been married for just under 2 years. Ryan, a commercial architect, had landed a promotion. Emma was a teacher at a local elementary school, passionate about art and always carrying around a sketchbook full of unfinished flowers and curious faces. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and for a while that was enough. They painted the walls themselves. Emma picked sage green for the kitchen and dusty rose for their bedroom. Ryan joked that it felt like living inside a wedding bouquet, but he indulged her anyway. She framed some of her watercolors and hung them by the window. He installed floating bookshelves and proudly filled them with both her poetry books and his collection of sci-fi novels. They talked about kids someday. Maybe a dog first. Maybe a cat. They both agreed that this apartment was a stepping stone, a place to grow roots before the next big chapter. But as months passed, something in Ryan began to change. At first, Emma thought it was just stress. New responsibilities at work, the pressure to maintain the image of a thriving young couple. But then came the late nights, the missed dinners, the sudden secretive nature about finances. He started locking his phone, avoiding eye contact when she brought up weekend plans. It wasn't that he had stopped loving her, not immediately anyway, but it was like watching someone slowly turn away from the light from her and not even realizing they were drifting. Still, Emma stayed hopeful. They had built this life together, hadn't they? But it was during a particularly mundane Tuesday evening that the first real crack showed. They were eating takeout on the floor of their half-furnished living room. Ryan had been distant all week, and Emma decided to bring up something she had been quietly considering. "I've been thinking," she said, using her fork to trace patterns into her rice. "If we're going to put in that big down payment from my inheritance, I think we should put both our names on the deed." Ryan didn't look up. "We already discussed this." "Not really," Emma replied calmly. "We just kind of assumed." He sighed. Loud, frustrated Emma, "Come on, it's not a big deal. It's just paperwork." She put her fork down. "No, it's not just paperwork. It's security. It's commitment. It's equity. You know this isn't about the money. It's about fairness." No. He looked at her, then expression unreadable. "Why do you suddenly care so much? Are you planning to leave me?" His words hit her like a slap. "No," she said quietly. "But I need to know that if anything ever happens, I won't just be out." Ryan stood up and began pacing. "I can't believe this," he muttered. "You think I'm going to screw you over?" Emma didn't answer. She didn't want to admit that lately the thought had crossed her mind more than once. They didn't resolve it that night. Over the next few weeks, the apartment, once a symbol of new beginnings, started to feel like a cage. Conversations turned into arguments. Ryan began spending more time at the office, and Emma found herself sitting alone at the dinner table, staring at the cold chair across from her. She confided in her best friend, Naomi, who had always been skeptical of Ryan's charm. "I'm not saying he's cheating," Emma said one night over wine, "but he's hiding something. I can feel it." Naomi didn't say much. She just reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. "I just want to understand," Emma whispered. "We built this place together. I thought that meant something." When the apartment was finally finished, fully furnished, decorated and alive with all their touches, Emma expected things to get better. She hoped the space they created would bring them back together. But instead, Ryan grew colder, more irritable, less invested in the home they had built. One night, she found a new set of keys on the hallway table marked private. She opened the drawer where they kept important documents and found a folder full of bank statements, all in Ryan's name. The latest account had a sizable withdrawal, one she didn't recognize. Emma took a deep breath. She knew she needed to talk to him, but part of her was afraid of what she might hear. And then just a few days later it happened. "I've been thinking," Ryan said, his voice calm, detached, as they sat at the table one evening. "Maybe it's time we went our separate ways." Emma blinked. "Excuse me, I don't think this is working anymore," he continued. "We've been fighting. You're always suspicious. I can't live like this." Emma stared at him. "You're leaving me. I've met someone else," he said flatly. Her name's Jade. She makes me feel like myself again. The betrayal wasn't even the worst part. It was the way he said it. So casually, like he had rehearsed it in the apartment. She asked, her voice shaking. I'm selling my half, he said. You can stay or not. I don't care. Emma didn't cry. Not then. She just nodded fine. Sell your half, but don't expect me to make it easy. That night as Ryan packed his things, Emma sat alone on the balcony watching the city lights flicker like broken promises. The apartment they had built together now felt like a battleground, but Emma wasn't going to surrender. Not this time. The shadow behind the smile. Emma thought she had prepared herself for anything. Anger, regret, loneliness. She'd gone through the stages in her head, like chapters of a book she didn't want to read, but couldn't put down. What she hadn't prepared for was the knock on the door. It came 3 weeks after Ryan walked out on Thursday morning. Too early for visitors, too quiet, to be afraid. She must open the door, expecting this and maybe delivery or they boiled and go manager. Standing there, or was it a man? Tall, broad-shouldered, with a navy blue backpack slung over one shoulder and an envelope in his hand. Emma Clark, he asked, polite but reserved. Yes, I'm Noah, he said, offering the envelope. I just closed on the other half of this apartment. I believe this makes us roommates. Emma froze. Excuse me. Noah raised both hands quickly. I know it's sudden. I tried contacting the agent to coordinate a proper introduction, but it all happened fast. I was told the unit was ready for move-in today. Emma's eyes darted to the envelope in his hand. Her name was there next to Ryan's, the property paperwork notarized and official. Her breath caught in her throat. You bought Ryan's half. Yes, he said it was urgent. Said he needed the money quickly, so we negotiated. I just assumed. He trailed off, sensing her discomfort. Emma stepped back, letting him inside without another word. She didn't want the neighbors overhearing. She didn't want her dignity walking out with her robe and slippers. Once inside, she offered him coffee out of habit, then immediately regretted it. He accepted also out of habit. They sat in silence while the kettle boiled. Noah, to his credit, didn't press her with questions. He looked around the apartment respectfully, eyes pausing on the hand-painted vases, the bookshelf filled with poetry, and the framed photos Emma hadn't yet taken down. This place has heart, he said quietly. Emma blinked. Excuse me, it's warm, real? Not like one of those showroom condos. You can tell someone loved building this. Emma's voice was quiet. I did. Noam nodded. She placed a cup of coffee in front of him. So, what are your plans? Honestly, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I needed a place close to my job. I work in environmental planning. I was living out of a rental that was falling apart. This place seemed like a blessing. A blessing, Emma repeated. He didn't notice the bitterness in her voice, or maybe he did and chose to ignore it. I'll stay out of your way, he said. I can even petition the space if that makes it easier. I'm sorry, I didn't know this would be complicated. Emma didn't know what to say. There were too many words inside her and none that fit. She spent the rest of the day in her room, door closed, trying to pretend the walls hadn't shifted, that the home she built hadn't just been split in two. That night, she texted Ryan. Emma, you sold your half to a complete stranger without telling me. The dots danced on the screen for 5 seconds. Ryan, it's legal. You don't. Oh, you knew this could happen, Emma. That's not the point. You blindsided me, Ryan. It's done. Move on. No apology, no emotion. Just those 3 words. Move on. She deleted the conversation, but she couldn't delete the fury. That weekend, Emma met Naomi at a cafe. You're kidding, Naomi gasped, nearly dropping her fork. He actually did it, Emma nodded, sold it to some guy named Noah. Just showed up on my doorstep like it was the most casual thing in the world. Is he awful? Be honest. Emma thought back to Noah's expression, his careful tone, the quiet sadness behind his eyes. He's not, she admitted. That's the weird part. He's polite, respectful. He offered to split costs and even asked permission before putting his toothbrush in the bathroom. Naomi raised an eyebrow. That's more considerate than most boyfriends. Emma laughed despite herself. Don't start. Naomi leaned forward. Maybe it's not the worst thing. Maybe it's the universe giving you space to heal with someone who doesn't come with emotional wreckage. Emma sighed. It's not that simple. No, but neither is life. As the days passed, Noah proved himself to be more than just not terrible. He was genuinely kind. He respected Emma's space. He washed his dishes. He offered to help fix a flickering kitchen light without making a show of it. One evening when she returned from school exhausted, she found the living room swept and the couch cushions fluffed. "Oh, I vacuumed," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "I hope that's okay." She nodded slowly. You didn't have to, I know." And that was it. No praise-seeking, no ulterior motives, just quiet acts of respect. Emma couldn't help but compare him to Ryan. How he used to leave shoes by the door. How he never helped fold laundry. How his silence used to feel like punishment, not peace. Still, there were awkward moments, like when they both reached for the same coffee filter, or when they accidentally bumped into each other in the narrow hallway and Emma found herself blushing. For the first time she laughed, genuinely laughed at something Noah said, and realized it had been weeks since her chest had felt light. One night she found Noah on the balcony sketching the city skyline with surprising detail. His lines were sharp, deliberate. "You draw?" she asked, surprised. He shrugged. "Used to gave it up. Work took over." She stepped closer, peeking at the pad. "You're really good. Don't flatter me," he said, but his smile was genuine. She leaned against the railing, eyes fixed on the twinkling skyline. "This place doesn't feel like mine anymore." Noah's voice was soft. "It doesn't feel like mine either." They stood in silence. Two strangers bound by shared square footage and invisible wounds. But in that silence, something fragile stirred. Not romance, not yet, but possibility. And then Ryan returned. It was a Saturday afternoon. Emma was in the kitchen barefoot, hair tied up, humming to a playlist Noah had made the night before. The knock was sharp, familiar. She opened the door. Ryan stood there wearing sunglasses and a smug grin behind son. Now, behind him was a woman impossibly young, dressed in designer jeans and chewing gum like it was an art form. "Emma," Ryan said, stepping inside like he still belonged. Emma froze Ryan. "What are you doing here? Just showing Jade the old place," he said, arms outstretched. She was curious. Jade peeked in, clearly unimpressed. "Kinda small," she muttered. Emma felt her blood boil. Ryan walked into the living room like a tour guide. "This was the couch I picked, remember that, Em?" Emma didn't respond, but then she heard footsteps behind her. Noah. He entered the room slowly, eyes calm but watchful. Ryan blinked. "Oh, you're the buyer." Noah extended a hand. "Noah Blackwell." Ryan ignored it. Emma stepped forward. "You have no right to be here." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "I own half, remember." Emma didn't flinch. "You did. Now you're just a visitor." Jade tugged on his sleeve. "Let's go, this is boring." Ryan glanced between Emma and Noah, and for the first time Emma saw uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "I thought maybe you'd be alone," he said quietly. Emma looked at him, really looked, and suddenly she felt nothing, no pain, no longing, no regret, only freedom. She turned to Noah. "Want to walk to the bakery? I need air." He smiled, "Sure." As they passed Ryan and Jade, Emma didn't look back. She didn't need to. Of boundaries and blueprints. The apartment had never felt emptier than the moment Ryan left it behind, with his smug words, his plastic perfect girlfriend, and his scent that still lingered in the hallway like an echo of everything Emma had let go of. That night she didn't cry. Instead, she brewed chamomile tea, sat at the kitchen island, and stared at the blueprint she'd drawn up for a remodel 2 years earlier, the one Ryan dismissed as too expensive and pointless since we won't be here long anyway. Funny how permanence had never been in his vocabulary, even when she mistook it for love. Noah found her there, elbows on the counter, chin in hand, eyes tracing the lines on the page. "Plans?" he asked gently, not wanting to intrude. She looked up surprised. "Old ones. I wanted to redo the kitchen, add open shelving, replace those ugly knobs, maybe knock down part of that wall for more light." Noah nodded, pulling up a stool. "I work with renovation permits all day. I could help you redesign it, if you'd like." Emma arched a brow. "You're an environmental planner. I'm also a carpenter's son," he said, grinning. "Trust me, I can swing a hammer without breaking the floor." She studied him for a second. "All right, but only if we start with the bathroom. I'm sick of those peeling tiles." And just like that, the remodeling began. It started small. Saturday mornings became project days. They'd sip coffee, make lists, argue about tile samples like an old married couple, her favoring matte whites, him pushing for something bold like navy blue hexagons. "You're surprisingly opinionated for someone who wears gray every day," Emma teased one morning as they stood in the aisle of a hardware store. "I contain multitudes." Noah replied deadpan. The work was messy. They scraped old paint, regrouted tile, fixed cabinet hinges. Emma wore oversized overalls she found in a donation bag and tied her hair up with a bandana. Noah brought his toolbox, humming under his breath as he sanded down surfaces like he was smoothing away more than just years of neglect. They laughed more than they had any right to. Sometimes they'd pause mid-task and sit on the floor with greasy pizza and paint in their hair. Other times, Emma would find herself watching Noah, noticing the way his hands moved, how focused he became when aligning measurements. "Did you always want to work with cities?" she asked once as they rested on the balcony, dust on their clothes and sweat glistening on their foreheads. Noah leaned back. "Not always. I used to want to be an architect, build homes that actually mattered. But then I realized how much politics ruled the field, so I pivoted," and now he shrugged. "Now I want to make places livable again. Not perfect, just a little less broken." Emma's breath hitched. She didn't say it out loud, but in her heart she whispered, "Me too." Their boundaries were clear at first. 2 separate rooms, shared kitchen, mutual respect. But boundaries blur when walls come down, literally and figuratively. Like the night the pipe burst under the sink and Noah spent hours fixing it while Emma knelt beside him, handing him tools and making jokes about becoming plumbers. Or the evening Emma found Noah asleep on the couch, his head tilted back, a notebook open on his chest. She covered him with a blanket, hesitated, then softly brushed a curl off his forehead. She didn't ask herself why she did it. Some things are better left undefined. One afternoon, a package arrived addressed to Emma, a large flat box wrapped in brown paper. She opened it on the living room floor while Noah was sanding a shelf nearby. Inside was a canvas, a painting, bright and warm, her favorite photo of the apartment in watercolor. She gasped at, "I didn't order this." There was a note unsigned. "To new beginnings in old places." Noah peeked over her shoulder. "Is that, your work?" she asked slowly, eyes narrowing. He smiled sheepishly. "I had it printed from a sketch I did. Just thought it might help make this feel like home again." Emma stared at him for a long moment. "Noah, you don't have to keep fixing things for me. I'm not," he said softly. "I'm fixing them for us. We both live here now, and I want it to feel good for both of us." Her heart stirred. Something warm, something dangerous. The next project was the bookshelf. They'd decided to build it from scratch, using reclaimed wood from a local salvage yard. As they worked, they talked about old dreams, missed chances, and things they were still afraid to say out loud. Emma told him about her failed attempt to publish a novel. "It's sitting in a drawer somewhere," she said. "Too personal, too soft. No one wants stories like that anymore." "I would," Noah said. She met his eyes. "You haven't even read it." "I've read you," he replied. "That's enough." That evening, as rain tapped against the windows, they sat on the floor before the unfinished shelf surrounded by screws and sawdust. Emma reached into the bag of takeout between them. "Do you think we're avoiding the obvious?" she asked suddenly. And Noah looked up. "What's the obvious? That we're becoming something we didn't plan." He was quiet for a moment. Maybe. But maybe that's the best kind of plan." She nodded slowly. "Do you regret moving in?" He didn't hesitate. "No." "Do you?" Emma looked around the room, the worn armchair, the glowing pendant light they installed last week, the shared photos now sitting side by side on the shelf. "No," she whispered. "Not at all." And then just like that, the mood changed. Because sometimes, just as you're starting to rebuild, the past remembers. It still has a key. A letter arrived the next morning, addressed to both of them. From a lawyer. Ryan was filing a motion to reclaim shared ownership of the apartment, claiming Emma had manipulated the terms of the initial sale, that she'd intentionally devalued the asset through unauthorized changes, that she was illegally cohabiting with an unrelated male in a jointly owned space. Emma dropped the letter on the table. Her hands trembled. Noah read it silently, his jaw tightened. This is ridiculous," she said. Voice brittle. "He's grasping," Noah said gently. "He's losing control and trying to punish you for it." Emma closed her eyes. "I thought I was done with him." "You are," Noah said, standing. "Let me help you finish it." The case for peace. The lawyer's letter sat on the kitchen table for days like an uninvited guest who wouldn't leave. Emma couldn't look at it without her stomach twisting. Noah had offered to handle everything, but she refused. "If I don't face this now," she told him, "I'll always feel like he still owns a part of me." Still facing it didn't mean she knew what to do. They spent days researching reading clauses from the original ownership agreement, flipping through folders Emma had long since buried in the back of the closet. legal jargon blurred with emotional pain. Every highlighted word about shared property and asset division felt like salt in a wound she thought had scabbed over. Noah tried to keep her grounded. He was the calm in her storm, bringing her tea, gently urging her to take breaks, reminding her to breathe. He knew better than to push. Emma wasn't someone you could steer. She had to walk into the fire herself. Finally, she decided to respond. Her reply, written on crisp, cream-colored stationery, was simple. Direct to whom it may concern, as per the ownership agreement. The apartment was divided equally. Mr. Carter willingly sold his half. I purchased it through proper channels and the transaction was recorded legally. As for the claim of unauthorized changes, any modifications made to the apartment fall under standard home maintenance and personal improvement. There has been no breach of contract. Regarding my current living arrangement, I am entitled to live with whomever I choose in my legally owned home. I will not be intimidated. Sincerely, Emma Rhodes. She signed it with a firm hand, sealed the envelope, and dropped it off at the post office without fanfare. When she returned home, Noah was installing the last handle on a newly painted cabinet. "It's done," she said. He looked up. "How do you feel?" Emma paused. "Like I'm just beginning." The confrontation came sooner than expected. A week later, as Emma returned from the local co-op with fresh bread and rosemary, she found Ryan standing at the building entrance, arms crossed. He looked different. Not thinner or older, just smaller, as if something inside him had shrunk. "You planning to let me in?" he asked. "You don't live here anymore. Half of that place was mine." He snapped. Emma replied. She walked past him and up the stairs. He followed. "I'm not here to fight," he said, trailing behind. "Really? Then what do you call sending a lawyer to my front door?" "I was angry," Ryan admitted, "and confused. You never used to stand up to me like this." Emma reached the apartment, unlocking the door and stepping inside. People change. "Yeah, I noticed." Noah was in the kitchen slicing vegetables. He turned when he heard the voices. Knife paused mid-air. "We have company," Emma said flatly. Noah set the knife down. "Should I step out?" "No," Emma said quickly. "Stay." Ryan looked between them, scoffing. "So this is the new guy. This is the man who helped me build a home after you tried to tear it apart." The words stunned even her. Ryan's jaw clenched. "I didn't come here to fight. I need to understand. How did you move on so fast?" Emma stepped closer. "Because I had already let go long before you packed your bags. You made sure of that every time. You made me feel like I was an inconvenience in my own home." Ryan sank onto the couch. "It was supposed to be our dream place and now it's just yours." Noah walked into the hallway, giving them space. Emma didn't stop him. "You had a chance to be part of that dream," she said, but you sold it. You made your choice." Ryan looked up. "And he's better than me, right?" Emma didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the kitchen, pulled open a drawer, and handed Ryan a piece of paper. It was a list, a messy coffee-stained list of all the repairs and renovations they'd completed in the past 3 months. "This is what it means to stay, to work for something. Not just financially, but emotionally." He showed up for the hard parts. Ryan stared at it. "I guess I never knew how—" Emma smiled sadly. "Neither did I, until someone showed me." Ryan stood. "I won't bother you again. You deserve to be happy, even if it's not with me." As the door clicked shut behind him, Emma exhaled deeply. She turned to find Noah watching from the hall. "You okay?" he asked. "I think I am," she replied, for the first time in a long time. And that night they ate dinner on the balcony, just the two of them. No shadows, no ghosts, just the quiet peace of two people rebuilding from the rubble together, reclaiming joy. For weeks, Emma had poured her energy into the apartment, the sanding, the painting, the quiet companionship of Noah. But now that the noise of construction had calmed, something deeper stirred inside her, a quiet ache, not of sadness but of longing. Not for Ryan, not for love, but for something she had forgotten how to crave herself. One Saturday morning, as soft sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, Emma stood in front of the linen closet and pulled out a dusty box labeled "Old Notebooks. Do not touch." She sat cross-legged on the living room rug, Noah still asleep in the next room, and opened the box like one might open a time capsule. Sketches, story, drafts, half-written poems, torn pages of children's book ideas. Some pages were stained with coffee. Others had comments scrawled in red ink, "Try again," or "Too much emotion." But among the chaos she saw it. Her before marriage, before compromise, before she learned to shrink herself. That evening she was quiet, reflective. Noah noticed bad days. She shook her head. Not bad. Just Remembering he waited, gave her space. Finally, she whispered, "I used to dream of being an illustrator. A children's author, actually." Noah looked up from his mug. "So, do it." She laughed bitter. "I'm almost 35. I haven't picked up a brush in years." And Emma stared at him. "I wouldn't even know where to begin." Noah leaned back in his chair. "You begin, that's it. Step 1, pick up the brush." It started small. Emma cleared off the corner of the dining table and made herself a makeshift studio sketchbooks, watercolors, fine-tipped pens. The first attempts were stiff, hesitant, but soon her hand began to remember. There was a little girl with wild curls and red boots who kept showing up in the margins. Sometimes on a swing, sometimes staring at the stars. Emma named her Junie. "She's kind of you," Noah remarked one afternoon, peeking at the sketch. Emma smiled. "She's braver than me." Noah raised an eyebrow. "That's not possible." One afternoon, as Emma was flipping through pages at the local art supply store, Noah held up a flyer: "Community Showcase, Local Artists Night, seeking first-time exhibitors." She snorted. "I'm not putting my childhood doodles up next to oil portraits and mixed media." But Noah just folded the flyer and tucked it into her tote bag. Later that night, she found it again, unfolded it, reread it, then folded it again. The next morning, she casually mentioned, "If I were to hypothetically show something, I'd need to frame it, and I have no frames." Noah didn't say a word. He just showed up an hour later with a bag full of second-hand frames and a roll of wire. The apartment slowly transformed again, not with construction dust or sawdust this time, but with color. Emma and Noah cleared out the wall near the entryway and hung 3 prints, 2 Junie illustrations, and one of the city skyline drawn by Noah. "You're part of this too," she told him. He shrugged. "I'm just the guy with the hammer. You're the guy who gave me courage." She replied, and then they hosted their own show. Not in a gallery, not in a studio, but right there in their home. They invited a few people. Naomi came, of course, wearing a red dress and bringing a bottle of wine with a ribbon that said "Finally, Living." A few of Emma's old co-workers arrived, too surprised. "Delighted, we didn't know you were an artist." One said, "I forgot." Emma replied, smiling. 2 of her former students, now in high school, showed up with homemade cookies. "You were our favorite teacher," they said. "You made us believe we were good at something." And now Emma was doing that for herself. Near the end of the evening, as soft music played and laughter filled the apartment, Emma slipped away to the balcony for a moment of quiet. She leaned on the railing, looking out over the city lights, so familiar yet somehow new. Noah stepped beside her, offering her a glass of water. "I thought I needed the world to tell me I was good enough," she said quietly. "But I only needed me." Noah didn't say anything. He just clinked his glass gently against hers. "To you," he said. Emma smiled. "To reclaiming joy." Foundations built from truth. The apartment had never been quieter, not in an empty way, not like the hush that followed Ryan's departure, but in the way silence settles when 2 people are learning how to listen to one another without masks, without pretense. Emma and Noah had slipped into something neither dared name. It was gentle, natural, a series of quiet rituals and stolen glances. He'd refill her teacup before she asked. She'd fold his laundry when he forgot. They'd sit side by side on the balcony at night, reading their own books, but somehow still together, yet neither of them said a word about what it meant. One evening, Naomi, ever the voice of directness, texted Emma, "So is he your boyfriend yet, or still your emotionally available roommate who happens to look like a brooding artist in flannel?" Emma laughed but didn't reply, because she didn't know. They hadn't kissed. They hadn't even brushed hands with intent, but it was there. The way her heart jumped when he entered the room, the way he'd pause his music when she spoke, the way they'd instinctively lean toward each other like planets caught in orbit. Still, it wasn't fear that kept them silent. It was respect. The kind that says, "I'll wait until you're ready to walk beside me," not ahead or behind. Then one morning, everything shifted. Emma was organizing a drawer in the living room when she found it. A folder, plain gray, unmarked. She had been looking for masking tape. She hadn't meant to pry, but when the folder slid open, a few papers spilled onto the rug. A photo first. Noah younger standing in front of a glass building. His smile was wide, but his eyes weren't. Then letters, a termination form, a statement of resignation from a private urban development firm, and an email half printed, half crossed out in pen. Emma's hands trembled as she skimmed the lines. "We cannot undo the damage the miscalculated blueprint has caused. Show uninhabitable structure, misjudged soil integrity. Client has filed formal complaint. Contractor, dispute unresolved." She stopped reading. She sat back on her heels and stared at the folder like it had bitten her. A few minutes later, Noah entered, tossing his keys into the bowl near the door. He saw her, then the folder, then her face, and froze. "I wasn't looking for it," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, his voice just above a whisper. There was a long pause. Emma didn't speak. Neither did Noah. She didn't hand him the folder. She didn't accuse. But her silence asked a question. He sat on the edge of the coffee table, his hands clasped, eyes on the floor. "I messed up," he began. 3 years ago, it was a community housing project, my first one in a lead role. I was too eager. I didn't double-check some of the soil reports before green-lighting the foundation. The structure became unstable. 6 months later, they had to evacuate the families, tear the whole thing down. Emma blinked. "That was your fault." "Partially," he said, "and legally the firm shared the blame. But I signed off. I took the fall, and the guilt didn't go away. I left. I couldn't stomach sitting in another meeting where everyone talked about community as a selling point, but no one cared about the people who lived there." He finally looked up. "I thought you'd leave if you found out." Emma didn't move. Noah continued. "That's why I was renting that terrible studio when I met Ryan through the listing. I was trying to keep things simple, quiet. I didn't expect to move in with someone like you." She met his gaze. "Someone like me." He smiled faintly. "Someone who sees through walls." For a while, Emma just sat there thinking. Her heart beat a little too loudly in her chest. Then she said something Noah didn't expect. "We all have shadows." He blinked. "I stayed with a man who chipped away at me for years," she said softly. "Not with fists, but with absence, with apathy. I thought it was normal. I let it happen because I believed I wasn't enough." She exhaled. "But now I know better, and I know this. You don't have to be perfect to be good. You just have to be willing." Noah's voice cracked. "I wanted to tell you. I just didn't know when. Now is good," she said. And just like that, the air between them shifted again. Later that night, they sat side by side on the rug, Noah fiddling with a piece of molding he was planning to install in the hallway, Emma sketching Junie with a tiny bandage on her knee. After a long pause, he said, "There's something else I didn't tell you." Emma raised an eyebrow. "The reason I chose this apartment." She tilted her head. "I'd seen it before," he said. "Months before Ryan listed it, I was scrolling through a forum for interior design inspiration, trying to start over. You'd posted this hand-drawn layout of your dream renovation. You said something like, 'If I ever get the courage, this is what I'd want home to feel like, boss.'" Emma stared at him. "You didn't use your full name. Just E. Clark. But your handwriting, your sketches, I remembered them. And when I saw the photos of this apartment listed with Ryan's name, I knew this was the place." Emma blinked fast. "You bought in because of my design." "I bought in because of the feeling behind your design," he said. "Because someone out there still believed home could be a place to heal." Emma's throat tightened. And then she set down her sketch pad, leaned forward, and pressed her forehead gently to his. Neither of them said it, not yet, but it lived in the space between them. Trust, real, raw, earned. The pain of betrayal. Emma had always believed in the quiet magic of a home, its walls, its floors, the way the light filtered through the windows at dawn. But lately, the apartment that once felt like a sanctuary had become something else entirely. It felt like a prison. The creaky floorboards no longer echoed with laughter. The soft cushions on the couch no longer felt like a refuge. Everything had changed. It started slowly, like the fading of a sunset. At first, she told herself that Ryan's distance was just work stress, the pressures of a promotion, the demands of life. But then it was the small things. Too many late nights at the office, too many dinners spent in silence. Ryan was slipping away, and Emma felt it in every glance he avoided, in every conversation that turned into a stilted silence. But she refused to believe it. She refused to see the truth. She couldn't, not yet. Not when she had invested so much of herself into their dream, into this apartment they had built together. Every corner of this place held memories. The sage green in the kitchen, the dusty rose in the bedroom, the floating bookshelves Ryan had installed with pride. This place was supposed to be their foundation, the start of forever. But forever felt like a distant dream now. It was a Tuesday evening when the tension finally broke. They were sitting on the floor of their half-furnished living room, takeout containers spread out between them. Emma was stirring her rice absently when she decided to voice something that had been gnawing at her for weeks. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice low, "if we're going to put in the down payment for the new place, I think we should both be on the deed." Ryan didn't even look up from his phone. We already talked about this, he muttered, voice flat. No, we didn't, Emma said quietly. We just assumed. Ryan sighed, a heavy, frustrated sound. Emma, come on. It's just paperwork. Why are you making this such a big deal? Her fork clinked softly against her plate. She put it down, her voice steady but firm. It's not just paperwork. It's security. It's commitment. It's fairness. You know this isn't about the money. It's about knowing that if anything ever happens, I won't just be left out. Ryan's eyes flickered to her for a moment, but there was something unreadable in his gaze. Why do you care so much about this suddenly? Are you planning on leaving me? The words hit Emma like a slap, but she didn't flinch. No, she said quietly, but I need to know that if something happens, I won't be the one left holding nothing. Ryan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He began pacing back and forth, his hands running through his hair in frustration. I can't believe you think I'm trying to screw you over. This is ridiculous. Emma didn't argue. She didn't have the energy left for it. She simply stared at the table, the reality of what was happening settling in like a heavy weight in her chest. They didn't resolve anything that night, and by the time Ryan left for another late night at the office, Emma was left alone in their half-finished apartment, the air thick with unsaid words. Days passed, and the apartment, once a symbol of their love, became a reminder of everything that was falling apart. Their conversations were reduced to arguments, to accusations, to silence. Ryan spent more and more time at work, and Emma found herself sitting at the dinner table, the chair across from her cold and empty. One evening, after a particularly long silence, she confided in Naomi, her best friend since college. Naomi had never been particularly fond of Ryan, had always been skeptical of his charm, and now Emma could feel the weight of that skepticism bearing down on her. I'm not saying he's cheating, Emma said one night over a glass of wine, the words trembling in her voice. But he's hiding something. I can feel it. I don't know what it is, but I know he's not being honest with me. Naomi didn't say much. She just reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. It was a small gesture, but one that felt like the weight of the world. Emma had always been the one to give to reassure. But now it was Naomi's turn to hold her up. I just don't understand, Emma whispered. We built this life together. We built this apartment together. I thought that meant something. Naomi's gaze softened, but she didn't have an answer. Sometimes there were no answers, only the gnawing ache of uncertainty. Things didn't improve. They only got worse. One night, after the apartment had finally been furnished, after every last piece of furniture had been placed, Emma thought maybe this would be the turning point. Maybe, now that the place was perfect, things would settle. Maybe Ryan would come back to her to them, but instead he grew colder. He was more distant, more irritable, less invested in their home. One night, Emma found a set of new keys sitting on the hallway table labeled private. Her heart sank. She walked to the drawer where they kept important documents and opened it. Inside, she found a folder of bank statements, all in Ryan's name. One statement caught her eye. A sizable withdrawal, one she didn't recognize. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew she had to confront him, but part of her was afraid of what she might find. The next few days were a blur of tension, of emotions too complex to untangle. But it was only a few days later that the truth came crashing down. I've been thinking, Ryan said, his voice distant as they sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Maybe it's time we went our separate ways. Emma blinked, unable to process the words at first. Excuse me, Ryan didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on his phone. I don't think this is working anymore. We've been fighting so much. You're always suspicious. I can't live like this. Emma's stomach twisted. You're leaving me. Ryan finally looked at her, then his expression empty. I've met someone else, he said flatly. Her name's Jade. She makes me feel like myself again. The words didn't hit her the way she expected. They weren't a gut punch. They were just empty. She stared at him, her mind racing, her heart breaking. And the apartment? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Ryan stood up, grabbing a bag of his things. I'm selling my half. You can stay or not. I don't care. Emma didn't cry. Not then. Not when she wanted to, not when the hurt was so raw, so fresh. She simply nodded. Fine, sell your half. But don't expect me to make it easy. That night, as Ryan packed his things, Emma sat alone on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker below. They had built this apartment together, and now it was the place they were tearing apart. Emma felt a strange sense of finality. This was it. This was the end. But in the quiet, she felt something stir within her. She wasn't going to surrender. Not this time. 3 weeks passed after Ryan left. 3 weeks of silence, of walking through their shared space that now felt like an empty shell. Emma could feel the ghosts of their past, the echoes of the love that had once been. And then one Thursday morning, the knock came. It was too early for a friend, too quiet to be anyone from the building. She opened the door to find a man standing there holding an envelope. "Emma Clark?" he asked, his voice polite but reserved. "Yes," she replied, her heart racing in her chest. "I'm Noah," he said, handing her the envelope. "I just closed on the other half of this apartment. I believe this makes us roommates." Emma froze. "Excuse me." Noah raised both hands quickly, sensing her discomfort. "I know it's sudden. I tried to contact the agent to coordinate a proper introduction, but it all happened fast. I was told the unit was ready for move-in today." Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at the envelope. Her name was on it. Alongside Ryan's, the property papers, official notarized. "You bought Ryan's half?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Noah nodded. "Yes, he said it was urgent, needed the money quickly. We negotiated and I assumed... Well, it just happened fast." Emma stepped back, letting him inside. She didn't know what else to say. Didn't want to confront him in front of the neighbors. Once inside, she offered him coffee out of habit, then immediately regretted it. He accepted though, and they sat in silence while the kettle boiled. "This place has heart," Noah said quietly, looking around. Emma blinked. "Excuse me." "It's warm, real." Not like one of those showrooms," he continued. "You can tell someone loved building this. I did." Emma said softly. She placed a cup of coffee in front of him. "So what are your plans?" He shrugged. "I needed a place near work. I'm an environmental planner and my last rental was falling apart. This place seemed like a blessing." Emma laughed bitterly, though it wasn't really a laugh at all. "A blessing?" she repeated, her voice almost empty. Noah didn't notice her bitterness, or maybe he did and chose to ignore it. Instead he offered, "I'll stay out of your way if it's too weird. I can partition the space, make it easier." It was a generous offer, a small kindness in a place that had felt so cold for so long. But Emma couldn't bring herself to say anything more than, "Thank you." That day, she retreated to her room, shut the door, and tried to ignore the strange feeling of having a stranger in the apartment. She didn't know what she was supposed to do now. Was this really her life now? The next few days passed slowly. Noah was respectful, polite, quiet. He made dinner sometimes, but always with the smallest gestures of care. He cleaned up after himself, kept his distance, and never pushed. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't trying to replace Ryan either. One evening, Emma came home to find the living room swept and the cushions fluffed. "I vacuumed," Noah said nonchalantly, though Emma could see that he was trying to make things comfortable. She smiled softly, touched by the quiet respect he showed. It wasn't love, it wasn't anything close, but it was peace. A kind of peace she hadn't felt in months. Noah wasn't Ryan. He wasn't trying to be anything he wasn't. And Emma realized for the first time in a long time that she didn't need him to be. She just needed to be. Finding strength and healing, Emma spent the next few weeks in a strange, quiet limbo. The apartment, once a symbol of dreams and future plans, now felt like a battleground of emotions. But slowly, something shifted. It wasn't obvious at first. Just little moments, Noah respecting her space, cleaning up after himself without fanfare, leaving her notes to check on how she was feeling. He wasn't trying to replace Ryan, but in his quiet ways, Noah was giving Emma something she hadn't realized she'd needed so badly. Peace. The first time Noah offered to help with repairs, Emma hesitated. "I don't want to burden you," she said, her voice a mixture of pride and exhaustion. "You're not," he replied simply. "I'm here, aren't I?" It's just a shelf, Emma. I can do it." And that was the thing about Noah. He didn't make grand gestures or force his help upon her, he just was there. He didn't rush her to talk, didn't push her to feel something she wasn't ready to. He just quietly showed up day after day. One afternoon when Emma came home from work, she found Noah sitting on the couch sketching. She didn't know when he had started, but there he was, drawing, his concentration sharp, the pencil moving across the page with ease. She leaned against the doorframe, watching him for a moment, unsure of what it meant. Noah glanced up, sensing her presence. He smiled a little sheepish. "I used to sketch a lot," he said, "before everything got complicated." Emma stepped into the room, taking a seat beside him. The room was quiet, just the sound of his pencil against paper. For a moment there was no past, no pain, just the two of them in this shared space, in this new beginning. "You're really good," Emma said softly, almost to herself. Noah's lips curled into a smile. "Thanks. I haven't done it in a while." He hesitated, then added, "I used to want to be an architect, build homes that actually mattered, but life got in the way." Emma's heart ached a little. He wasn't the only one whose dreams had been lost along the way. "Did you ever finish your book?" Noah asked, looking up at her now. Emma froze, the question catching her off guard. Her novel, the one she'd started years ago, the one she'd abandoned because it was too personal, too vulnerable. She hadn't even thought about it in years. "I didn't," she said, her voice quiet. "It's sitting in a drawer somewhere. I just never thought anyone would want to read it." Noah didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at her as though he understood in ways she hadn't yet spoken. "I'd read it," he said simply. Emma blinked. "You haven't even seen it." "No," Noah said, a slight grin on his lips. "But I've read you, and that's enough." His words left her breathless, and for the first time in weeks, Emma felt like maybe, just maybe, she could let herself be seen again. Maybe she could share that part of her words, her heart, and not feel like it was too fragile, too broken to ever be worthwhile. As the days passed, the space between them began to shift. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't dramatic, but Emma started to notice the small things, how they would talk in the kitchen while cooking, how they would sit together on the balcony in the evenings. No longer with the tension of silence, but with a comfortable ease. She caught herself smiling, again laughing even. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was starting to wake up, like the fog was lifting. One evening, after another long day, Emma came home to find Noah on the balcony sketching again. This time the city skyline sprawled before him, its lights twinkling in the distance. She leaned over the railing, watching him for a few moments before speaking. "You're really good at this," she said, surprising herself with the compliment. Noah glanced up at her, a soft smile curling at the corners of his mouth. "I used to love it. I guess I just stopped. But sometimes you need something to remind you who you were." Emma felt a pang of recognition in his words. She had stopped too. Stopped dreaming, stopped painting, stopped being the woman she used to be, but standing there with Noah beside her, something in her began to stir. Maybe it was the realization that she didn't have to be alone in this, that she didn't have to fix everything herself. Maybe it was the knowledge that she had a choice, that she could still build something new. Not with Ryan, but with herself. As they both stood there, the city lights sparkling in the distance, Emma felt something shifting in her heart. It wasn't about finding someone to fill the void left by Ryan. It was about her. She had spent so long thinking she had to save the relationship, save the apartment, save everything. But now she realized it wasn't about saving anything. It was about letting go and rebuilding from the ground up on her own terms. The next morning, while Noah was at work, Emma pulled out a dusty old box from the back of her closet. The label read, "Old Notebooks. Do not touch." She hadn't opened it in years, but now sitting on the floor of the living room, she took a deep breath and opened the box. Inside were the remnants of her past half-finished stories, sketches of characters she had once dreamed of bringing to life, poetry that had never seen the light of day. For the first time in a long time, Emma smiled. She picked up one of the sketchbooks and began to draw, the ink flowing from her pen like it had never stopped. It wasn't about creating something perfect. It was about creating something real, something that belonged to her. A new beginning. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of small victories. Emma had always thought that she would need the approval of others to be happy, but now she realized that wasn't true. She didn't need anyone's validation to pursue her dreams, to be herself. She just needed to take the first step. One morning, Noah came home with a flyer. It was for a community showcase at a local art gallery. "They're looking for first-time exhibitors," Noah said, holding it out to her. "I think you should apply." Emma chuckled softly, shaking her head. "No way, my art isn't good enough for a show like that." Noah didn't back down. "You won't know until you try." It took some convincing. But Emma finally agreed to submit a few pieces. She wasn't doing it for anyone else. She was doing it for herself, and in the process she found something she hadn't expected: joy, the act of creating, of sharing her work, of showing up for herself. It felt like reclaiming a part of her that she had buried for so long. The night of the show, Emma felt a flutter of nerves. But as she entered the small gallery filled with familiar faces, Naomi, her old co-workers, even a few of her former students, she realized something. She didn't need anyone else to validate her. The smile on Naomi's face as she admired her work, the compliments from her students, it all felt like a confirmation that Emma had made the right choice. She had made a choice to reclaim her happiness, her creativity, and her life. Later that evening, Emma stepped outside onto the balcony for a moment of quiet. The city what stretched out before her, the lights twinkling in the distance. Oh, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. She wasn't waiting for anyone to fix her life. She was doing it herself. Noah joined her, offering her a glass of water. "How's it feel?" he asked softly. "It feels like I found something I thought I'd lost," Emma replied, her voice quiet yet full of conviction. Noah clinked his glass gently against hers. "To new beginnings," he said. To reclaiming joy, Emma added her heart, light for the first time in years. As they stood there looking out over the city, Emma knew that whatever happened next, she would be okay. She had found her strength, and she had found someone who truly understood her, not because they completed each other, but because they both respected the journey of healing. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. This was more than just the story of Emma and Ryan. This was the story of reclaiming oneself after the collapse of a dream, a story of how sometimes the hardest part is not facing the world, but facing yourself, and realizing that you are enough, just as you are. Through her journey of self-discovery, Emma learned that healing isn't linear, and it isn't about perfection, it's about choosing yourself, and in that choice, everything changed.